Hey everyone, Piano Man Chuck here, and today I want to talk about MTM speaker designs. Those letters MTM actually stand for something. They stand for midwoofer, tweeter, and midwoofer, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But this is going to be a multi-part video. The first part, we're going to talk about the MTM speaker design. Then, in the second part, we're going to go into two different studio reference monitors that actually implement that design. That's going to be the PreSonus Eris E66 and the iLoud MTM monitors. And then the third part, we're going to go and spend a lot of time demonstrating samples between how these two different sets of monitors sound. So it's going to be a really educational and interesting video for you. So I hope you enjoy it. So if you want to jump ahead and hear what the monitors sound like, I can understand that. So we'll give you the time in the video that you can skip forward to actually hear that, and then note the time that you're at now so you can come back and understand everything it is about what you've been hearing and why the MTM design is there for the first place. Okay, so basically, what the MTM speaker design does. First, let's talk about regular speakers. Now, what you're used to seeing is a cabinet with a tweeter and a woofer below that. And basically, that's probably the most popular design around. Occasionally, you'll see a three-piece driver in there where you've got a tweeter, a mid-range, and a woofer. Okay, now here's the problem with those designs. So let's go back to the two-speaker design, the tweeter and the woofer. When you have just the tweeter alone, the sound comes at you straight on. When you have the woofer alone, the sound comes at you straight on. When you mix those, the frequencies kind of interleave, and basically, let's say this is your tweeter coming this way and your woofer coming this way. When you have that, the sounds from the tweeter kind of lobe downwards. And so you're getting kind of room reflections. You're getting the frequencies coming to your ears at different times. So the MTM design actually corrects for that when it's implemented correctly. And what it does is you have two low frequency drivers and the high frequency driver in the middle. And what that does is instead of lobing down and lobing up with the other woofer, everything comes straight at you now. So now you're hearing all the frequencies at the same time. And that's really a wonderful design because if you've not heard speakers with MTM design before, you're in for a treat. It sounds like it's coming from something much, much bigger. That's why iLoud, with their 3.5-inch low frequency drivers, sounds like it's coming from something 6 or 8 inches. And the same thing with the Eris E66, the 6.5-inch mid-woofers that are in there sound like they're coming from something a lot larger. All right, now the way the MTM design is done properly is not only to have the tweeter exactly between the two, but to have the two mid-woofers such that they're an equal distance each from the tweeter. That takes care of a lot of things. Now, what this design is for is it's basically a vertical design. Now, what PreSonus has done is they've taken the tweeter and they've moved it out a little bit so that they can move the mid-woofers closer together. And by doing that, they don't lose anything about MTM design, but it gives you the ability to turn it horizontally. So now you have a speaker here that can be used either vertically or horizontally. With the iLoud MTM speakers, they give you a little rubber platform that you can rest it on if you want to turn it horizontally, but still they tell you it is meant for vertical design. It's going to sound better that way. Now, again, we're going to go over what the MTM is and why they call it mid-woofer, tweeter, mid-woofer. Now going back to the two-speaker design, we have a woofer and a tweeter. Now with the MTM design, the low-frequency driver is going to reproduce everything a woofer and a mid-range driver would reproduce. That's why they call it a mid-woofer. And it's not as big as a woofer because you've got two of them, and when their sound waves combine, it sounds like something much, much bigger was producing those. And this is why it's called mid-woofer, tweeter, mid-woofer, MTM. Now, the name of these products, iLoud simply took the design name MTM and called their speakers that. PreSonus are making it part of their Eris series, and this is the E66 model. They have an E44 model, which is a little smaller, but the reason I'm comparing these two with each other, not only do they sound kind of similar, but the price was identical. They were $350 each for the PreSonus E66s and $350 each for the iLoud MTMs. So basically, it's going to set you back $700 for whatever pair you want. But just a couple of weeks ago, just before I'm doing this video, PreSonus announced a permanent price decrease on their Eris E66 models by $40 per speaker. They're now $310 per speaker. So you're saving $80 over a pair if you were going to buy these. Now, if you have the space, the Eris E66s are the way to go. And if you're short on space, the iLoud MTM monitors are the way to go. Either way, you can't lose out with either one of these monitor pairs. If you're using the iLouds, the dispersion rate is pretty narrow. So if you're going to stand up, you're going to lose a lot of sound because that dispersion level isn't going to be hitting your ears. So what they've done with these is they've made a way on their stands to tilt this up to 20 degrees so that it is pointing at your ears. All right. With the PreSonus, you don't have that problem. They have a wider dispersion. And you can get up and walk around. You're not going to notice anything. Now with the iLouds, yeah, I can go over here and grab something on another part of my desk. I can actually move. If I'm on wheels, I can slide back and forth. But again, if I get up and stand up, now I'm out of their field of dispersion, unless I have these higher up, okay? Now there's other differences too, obviously, besides the size difference. Now, the iLouds are just 5.5 pounds a piece. That's almost nothing. And as far as the PreSonus, they're 23.4 pounds each. So there's a big difference there. Also, I've noticed if you have these cranked up, yeah, you're going to hear the bass on the iLouds. There's no question about it. It is amazing how it reproduces the bass. I've had people come in here and look around and they're like, where is that sound coming from? And with the PreSonus, not only do you hear it, when this is cranked up, you actually feel that right there in your chest cavity. And because of that, you can actually take these to another room, a big room, and throw a party, and people are going to hear it and they're going to feel it. Unlike these, where it's more of a studio speaker. Now, as far as the sizes of the drivers in here, with the iLouds, it's a 3.5-inch low-frequency driver on top and on bottom on each. And in the middle, you've got a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. Whereas with the PreSonus, you have two 6.5-inch low-frequency drivers and a 1.25-inch silk dome tweeter. And obviously, there's a size difference. I mean, you've got 10.4 inches in height on the iLouds and 18.1 inches in height on the PreSonus. Now, as far as frequency response, the PreSonus will go down to 45 hertz, up to 22 kilohertz. The iLouds, you can adjust them. They have a low frequency extension here. You can take them down as low as 40 hertz, or you can change that to 50 hertz or 60 hertz. And they'll go as high as 24 kilohertz, which is amazing. Now, the reason they have that low frequency extension, 40, 50, or 60 hertz, is these produce a lot of bass. I mean, a lot. To the point where it can produce too much. The louder you turn it up, the more it's going to produce, and it may distort or clip. So you want to cut that bass. You want to cut it down to maybe 50 or even 60. And if it's still too much, they put in a 3 decibel low frequency cut switch. So, and that helps a lot. And when you start playing with these, you'll understand why they put it in there. It really is necessary. And as far as power, there's similar wattage with the low frequency drivers. The iLouds produce 70 watts of power, and that's on the low frequency drivers, the midwoofers, whereas the PreSonus produces 80 watts of power. Now, when it comes to the high frequency drivers, the tweeters, 30 watts in the iLouds and 65 watts on the PreSonus. So total 100 watts RMS on each one of the iLouds and 145 watts RMS on each one of the PreSonus. And as far as maximum sound pressure levels, also impressive. With the iLouds, we're talking about 103 decibels at 1 meter. And with the PreSonus, we're talking about 106 decibels at 1 meter. And it makes a big difference. As far as connections, the iLouds have a combo jack on there. It's basically for XLR or a 1/4 inch. As far as the PreSonus, you've got 3 different types of inputs. Not only do you have XLR and a 1/4 inch as a separate input, you also have an RCA input as well. So 3 different types of inputs on the PreSonus as opposed to 2 on the iLouds. One more thing about the iLouds. They include with it an ARC microphone. It's a special type of microphone. It's an acronym for automatic room calibration. So basically, you have this. They give you a mic clip for it so that you can put it on any mic stand. And they give you a cord. So it's an XLR cord, and it goes into that ARC microphone. The other end is 1/8 inch, which goes into the 1/8 inch ARC microphone input on the back of these. And you have a switch there that you hold for ARC room calibration. And it's going to throw out these weird sounding sounds like... And after a minute or so, it's calibrated perfectly to your room. Now, you do want to have these where your ear is going to be. Now, the only suggestion I could have to improve at least the pricing on the iLouds is each iLoud you buy comes with this. Now, if you're buying a pair, you really don't need 2. So it would be really nice if they sold you a pair for less pricing than a single unit times 2 and just included one of these. Anyway, I hope they're listening to that because a lot of people have also requested the same thing. And when you're done with this, you basically now have a free cable, which is XLR female at one end and 1/8 inch at the other, which is ideal for using this for things like DSLRs, because we all know the sound sucks on that, and we can now use a regular mic with that. Okay, now you might have to get a sound booster for that. Some of them will take mic input levels, others it's line levels, so you might have to boost that. So you might want to check with your camera specs on that. All right, now let's go to the back panel on each one of those. On the iLouds, you'll see 5 buttons up there, and each time you push one of those buttons, it changes the position of the blue light. And the blue light shows you which one of the 3 or 2 different configurations you can have. Now, going from left to right, The first thing is the low frequency extension, what I just told you about, with 40, 50, or 60 hertz. I just explained that, and also I kind of just explained the low frequency switch on the right, where you can have this flat, or you can add bass plus 2 dB, or you can take it away minus 3 dB. And by the way, it's should be common knowledge that the closer you have a speaker to the wall, the more bass you're going to get. It's just physics. So if you're going to have these near a wall, you're going to use the low frequency cut of minus 3 dB. And if you have them out, away from the wall, you might consider plus 2 dB. The way I have this right now, I have it set up to flat. And I have my low frequency extension set up to 40 hertz. Okay. Next is the high frequency. Now you can boost that by 2 decibels or you can cut it by 2 decibels. All depends on your room. As far as calibration and presets, they have presets for desk or flat, either one, and then they have calibrate. And the calibrate is something you would press and hold it till it starts, and that's where you have the ARC microphone hooked up. And it's going to go through the self-calibration, and it's going to calibrate itself to your room. And lastly on the right is sensitivity, plus 4 dB or minus 10 dB. Now, when I first got these home and I plugged these in, I was really disappointed because I'm like, hey, this is as loud as it goes. What's the deal here? So then I'm looking at the stuff on the back panel and I see the minus 10 dB. So I needed it more sensitive. So I put that on and all of a sudden it's like a whole different speaker here. So if you get these and you plug it into your system and it doesn't go very loud at all, remember that switch and set it for minus 10 dB sensitivity. Then we have the volume knob, self-explanatory, and we have the combo input, whether it's an XLR or a 1/4 inch that you want to plug into here. Then you have the 1/8 inch ARC mic input that I was talking about. Then, of course, your AC power. Now, they have a USB Type B input here, and it's not for anything but product updates. And I'll get into that in a second, why they need that. And then, of course, there's the power switch, off and on. Now, let me get back to this USB input. The reason they need it is these speakers are different than any other kinds of speakers. It's pretty rare that the company does this. It actually has an analog to digital converter in there, because what happens is when you have your sound source coming into the speakers, it converts that to digital, and everything that happens inside that speaker is happening with DSP, or digital signal processing, so it can give you the optimum signal and sound output for your room, and then it converts it back to analog so it can actually drive the speaker drivers. They're using the DSP to control things like crossovers, filtering, time alignment, equalization, dynamics control, and auto calibration. So it's totally DSP controlled and precision time aligned. And it also manages the off-axis response to manage the effects of room reverberations. All right, so that is the iLoud. Now let's go over to the back panel on the PreSonus and have a look at that. Unlike the iLoud, PreSonus is all about acoustics. And this is all going to be analog signals, so they're not converting it to digital, processing it, or anything like that. It's just a different way of doing it, a more standard way, a more common way of doing it. So let's look at the back panel. And of course, on the left, we see that we have the power input from your AC mains. And you can select that, whether you're in Europe or United States, different power. And then you have the power switch to turn it off and on. Now, next to that, you'll see 4 diagrams here. And it says acoustic space, high frequency, mid frequency, and low frequency. So those are the drawings for that. And On the right side, you're going to see things that match that, so you can actually control the acoustic space, the high frequency, mid frequency, and low frequency. All right, next to that, you've got three more drawings of where you might typically be seated in relation to these speakers. So they show you sitting at a desk on all three. The first two is kind of standard, whether it's closer to the wall or farther away, or if the speakers are tilted more towards your ears. All right, then the next thing you'll see your inputs. You've got RCA unbalanced, and then you've got TRS, which is 1/4 inch, and that can be balanced or unbalanced. If you don't know the difference, don't worry about it. And then the next one is XLR. All right. And the panel next to that is everything that was described in those two sets of diagrams. So if you're looking at the top, you got your main input gain, that's your volume, goes without saying. And then you've got low cutoff so that you can have flat 80 hertz or 100 hertz. Now this is different than the iLouds. This is for if you're going to hook up a subwoofer, then you don't need these to go down that low. You're going to have a subwoofer take over, so you want to cut that at 80 or 100 hertz and let the subwoofer do its thing. And acoustic space, you're going to match that to one of those three drawings. If you go back and look at those drawings, that first one says 0 dB, the next one says -2 dB, and the last one says -4 dB. Depending on which one of those drawings depicts your situation of how you're going to be using it, that's where you come in and set the acoustic space switch to match one of those drawings. And it's labeled -4 dB, -2 dB, and 0. Then you have your mid and high pots over there so that you can boost or cut either one accordingly. It's more like a tone control there. All right. One more thing about the design on each. The iLouds are ported in the back. So if you're sitting here like me, and it's actually facing you instead of me, I'm going to feel the bass coming out of these rear ports. And I'm going to hear more bass coming out of it too, because it's aimed right at me. It's more designed to go off a wall, or actually the way it is, it's like 3 feet or so, 4 feet away from this wall, and there's still plenty of bass in front. So you don't have to worry about bass with these. You probably don't even need a subwoofer, although you could do that if you wanted to. As far as the PreSonus, they're ported too, but they're ported in the front. If you see the horizontal lines there, that's actually an opening for a port, and it's above the midwoofer on top and below the midwoofer on bottom. So you got dual ports there. And another nice thing, you'll see that PreSonus symbol that's all lit up, if you were to turn this horizontally, you could actually turn that symbol so it's matching wherever it's supposed to be, however you want it. Okay, so that's it for the specs and physical description on these different MTM monitors. And now, for what you've been waiting for, let's start getting into sounds with this. So let's start with the iLouds, and I've got a basic piano sound here. And let's do the same thing with the PreSonus. This actually makes any keyboard sound so wonderful. Now let's try the that big Kawaii EX Concert Grand, and we'll start with the iLoud. And now the PreSonus. All right, let's play something at the lower end. That was the iLouds. Here's the PreSonus. Alright, now let's try something else. Let's go to an organ, and this is with the iLouds. It's a church organ. And let's do the same thing with the PreSonus. Very impressive, right? Okay, well, let's try something like with a harpsichord. That was the iLoud, now the PreSonus. Let's go back to the iLoud and let's try some bass. This is a wood bass. PreSonus. iLoud. PreSonus. Try fantasy over here. iLouds. PreSonus. Here's a choir. iLouds. PreSonus. Here's a string ensemble. iLouds. PreSonus. Here's marimba. PreSonus. Go a little farther. That was iLoud. PreSonus. Clavinet. PreSonus. Vibraphone. iLouds. PreSonus. Alright, here's a drawbar organ with the iLouds. PreSonus. So anyway, it all boils down to what do you like better and where are you going to use this? Let's try it. Something with the piano again. That was iLoud, now PreSonus. Alright, so now let's get into some rhythms. All right, so on the rhythms, we got something over here called a funk shuffle. Let's start with that and see what it sounds like. We're going to go with the iLouds first. Now the PreSonus. Alright, what sounds better to you? We've got a lot more here that we can go with. Let's try something else. We've got, that was Funk Shuffle. Let's try a hip hop one. First with the iLouds. PreSonus. That was a good one because we got a lot of deep bass on that. All right, that was hip hop, and let's see what else do I have here. Here's a shuffle, and let's start with that on the iLouds. PreSonus. All right, that was a shuffle, and here's a funky beat. Let's try that. iLouds first. PreSonus. All right, cool. You're getting the hang of this now. All right, so you can start to hear the differences. Whichever one of these you choose, whether it's the iLouds for space or it's the PreSonus because you have the room for it, you cannot go wrong. And amazingly, either one of these are going to sound bigger than what they actually are because of the MTM design. Here's funk. Let's try that, and then we'll go on to something else. First with the iLouds. PreSonus. Actually, there's a jazz funk here too. Let's try that with the iLouds first. Now the PreSonus. All right, so now instead of just rhythm, let's try it with some actual music. And I'd love to play you some certain songs, but according to copyrights and YouTubes and all that, we're going to play you some stuff that I wrote instead. So here's one called Tranquility, and we're going to start off on the iLouds. Go to the PreSonus. All right, I want to point out something. You probably heard the bass was starting to get a little distorted there. So that's where we're going to go ahead and use that -3 dB cut, and we should be fine there. All right, so what I did is I did two things. I actually changed the low frequency extension from 40 to 50 hertz, and I used the -3 dB cut. So let's go ahead and see what kind of difference that made. And let's go back to the iLouds. Much better. Okay, so you get the idea on that one. Let's try a different one now. Let's go to something called Sparkle. iLouds first. All right, and here's one where I had a Korg wave drum and I was just running a test with this. So it actually is really good to test out really low frequencies and loud. So let's go there. And remember that I just did the 3 dB cut too. So let's go ahead with that. And we're starting out with the iLouds. Here we go. All right, so I guess you got a good clue now of which one sounds better to you. And again, you cannot go wrong with either one of these. Either one of these is going to sound great. And the MTM design is going to open up a new level of hearing things for you. The design itself, the sweet spot is extended. You've got a much greater sweet spot now. So I hope this video has been very informative for you. Piano Man Chuck, peace out. Thanks for watching.